Fine, thank you. So today's topic is on fintech frauds, and emerging, I don't know if you call it emerging area or which is just going to hit us very soon, sooner than expected, as we will see in this session. But I think from whatever limited experience I have handling some of the fraud prevention in this space, I can tell you that this is going to completely turn the tables of whatever we knew about fraud detection and fraud investigation back on us. And I think that's exactly where I think going to present a challenge wherein there will be significant pressure on anti-fraud professionals to transform themselves for the emerging age. In fact, obviously, needless to say, the most attractive, the line in with the vertical for frauds, obviously, is the financial sector. So that's where I think I chose this topic of fintech, because you'll be surprised to learn that during COVID period, when all of us, many of us have been stuck to our homes, fintech has been making very quiet progress, because obviously people sitting at home, especially the youngsters, they have done some marvelous innovations during this period. In fact, Chennai alone, I am told there are over 20,000 fintech startups which have blossomed here, and many of them have already got funded. So you can imagine that where we are headed for in terms of one of the most sensitive sectors of any economy, and especially our economy, which is the financial sector. So I'm sure you are able to see this slide here. Is that visible?
Yes, sir.
It's visible.
Okay. Do you see that moving?
No, movie is not. The only fintech frauds one screen is there.
Is it moving now?
Yeah,
it's moving. It's moving.
No.
Okay, thank you. So this is, I'm sure there is no guessing, this is your traditional bank, as you would even still find it in many of our places across India. And this is how the typical bank today looks like. But let me tell you, the silent revolution is already happening. We started with microfinance and slowly kind of pushing on to doorstep banking, and in a very big way now, which is being fired actually by fintechs who find especially the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities very attractive propositions for rolling out their innovations. The biggest hassle always earlier has been language, because if you see the rural folk, they are very intelligent, no doubt about it, but language was a problem, and their accessibility to mobile service or the confidence to get on to the mobiles was always a problem. But as we say, all the bad things also have a good side of it. That's exactly what the pandemic has done. As we will see, the mobile offtake, especially the smart mobiles and especially amongst the native language content, has taken off like anything. It is in fact supposed to be over a growth of 400% is what the DSCI study says. So this being where we are, maybe even today, and many of certainly the metros have certainly transferred. I'm sure if we take a poll here, how many of us visited our bank branch in the last 1 year? I can bet on it. Obviously, first of all, they were not open. And even if they were open, we didn't have the courage to really go there. But even if we take the poll for the earlier year, that is 2019, I'm sure many of us have never seen our bank branch for quite some time now. And we have been doing, somehow got adapted to online banking and mobile banking. And honestly, the way that it is now become a habit that we consider it almost primitive, that to going to a bank or giving a check is kind of becoming now a new status symbol in a way, if we can say. Having said that, so what I intend doing in the next maybe about 50 minutes is to take you through these broad questions. Excuse me. What is this fintech? And we'll look at some frauds in this fintech. But when we look at these frauds in this fintech, obviously, let me tell you, by the time we go to sleep and come back, there is a new category of fraud, which has already been happened in fintech. So that's how fintech is moving. Needless to say, the technology is also galloping like anything. In fact, banks, ironically and paradoxically, are the fastest adapters today of fintech innovations. In fact, many of the banks have already set up significant investment in incubation cells for fintechs, wherein they incubate many of these fintechs. But looking at the fraud perspective, I think we'll try to understand what's different about these fintech frauds. And most importantly, try to answer the last question. Are we, as anti-fraud professionals, ready in countering fintech frauds? So that's, I think, the most important question that we'll have to deal with. Having said that, for many of us who may not be aware of what is fintech, I am sure that there will be a couple of us who are already doing some very good work there. You'll have to bear with me when I talk about some basics here. But considering that there could be many of us who still want to understand, or many of us already doing this, but maybe just want to relook at it. So let's look at it. You know, in my assessment and looking at various definitions which are available for fintech, at a very simplistic understanding level, it is financial services delivery. Now, if you understand what is financial service delivery, very simply, whatever services that you have been availing from a bank traditionally are financial services. Now, it could also be an NBFC, it could also be even an insurance company. So all these come under the category of what we call as financial services. It kind of comes under the BFSI segment. But the most important thing is, when you look at financial services delivery and support services, that being delivered through a technology platform or using technology in such a manner that much of your workflow and interaction that you earlier had, instead of happening with a human being somewhere, happens through your mobile and an application on the mobile. So obviously the backbone for the entire thing is the internet. And today, as we say, it is the mobile. But honestly, when I say mobile, as we talk, somewhere in the world, the Tesla's cars are being rolled out in volumes like anything. And many of these autonomous cars obviously have the capability of having a payment gateway, wherein you obviously, when you're sitting in an autonomous car, you have no driving to do. So what else do you do? The most preferred hobby is shopping. And when you do shopping sitting in a car, mind you, all this goes, you could be 6 of you or 5 of you sitting in the car and doing shopping. And all this go through a small gateway, which will be there in your autonomous car. And that could become the customer of your bank. So we are going to find significant challenges to what today we know as KYC, because tomorrow a lot of machines would be the customers of these financial systems, which is what is already happening in big way. But if you look at the deployment, if you understand little one step down to what is it and how can we look at across the popular fintech implementations, the first and foremost that hits us is payment. I'm sure all of us are aware with UPI today, and we have already seen the ease with which we can transfer money. And of course, we have been using the Bharat QR code, the BHIM app, and of course, the NEFT RTGS have always been there. But all this put together, it has completely transformed our experience of how we used to transfer money. Today, in fact, if you're issuing a check, which is going to take a couple of days, you go to the pains of filling up a form, maybe somebody has to go and deposit it in the bank and it goes through a clearing process. All that is kind of today primitive today. So you just are sitting at your home, and if you just know the mobile number of the recipient, you can just type in the mobile number of the recipient and you could simply just transfer money. So it's become as easy as that. And that is where, if you see the traditional paradigms of the public sector being in banking has gone. Today, in fact, there are startups which are doing banking. In fact, the very definition of banking has changed. In fact, you look at Gartner, what they said even 5 years back. In fact, 5 years back, they said that banking would be kind of completely transformed in the way we look at it today, maybe another 5 to 7 years from now. Now, give our country maybe 10 years. I think thanks to the pandemic especially, it has pushed all this banking into the mobile. And for much reasons, many of us have already started our experimenting with these all these gadgets and the apps that we have. Now, banking itself, you see, has completely changed. If you look at the kind of capabilities that are being offered in banking through the mobile app and the kind of facilities, like you can simply place a FD on your own, you can structure your FD on your own. In fact, there will be even investment advices which comes from your bank or your maybe investment advisory, which says that, okay, this is what maybe you want to do with your finances. So all that is kind of already happening in a very big way. Alternate lending is also moving up like anything. In fact, if you see, China is on top when it comes to what we call as peer-to-peer finance. What is peer-to-peer finance? A very simple thing, like you would lend to your friend if you have some cash. So it is as simple as that, but you cannot lend it to anybody who is unknown. And that is where it is becoming like the the Flipkart or the Amazon, wherein you look at the review of the person and you possibly want to say, okay, I don't mind dealing with him. So that is kind of becoming the norm slowly, wherein P2P or software is also slowly kind of taking off in different forms. And we could possibly see a significant take of this as well in the future. Of course, wealth management, you got tremendous tools on advisories, your personal finance management tools. There are a whole lot of software which are today available, apps which can help you to completely structure your finances in exactly the same manner as you would consult an investment consultant. Insurance, I think the entire scene has transformed. There are no physical policies unless you want it so badly, because everything is dematerialized today, and you don't need to meet your agent anymore, because you simply go on. In fact, you get the link from your insurance company, you just need to click on it and say pay. And if you set an standing instruction, even that would not be required, it will automatically get renewed. And as we go into the future, we would see blockchain and smart contracts taking over all this, that the way that we are doing all this today. In fact, if you look at the capital markets, there are very popular and very, very successful apps in the Indian market, like Zerodha, Scriptbox, and a whole lot of things, which have made their place in the entire capital market scenario. I'm sure many of you who are hardened, investment experts, especially in day trading and all, I'm sure you would be very familiar with the Wall Street Journal and a whole lot of things. Today, the options are so many, and all of that is driven by AI algorithms, which look at your risk profile and suggest what you need. So all that comes under the concept of fintech. Then, of course, you have excellent options today of SMB financing, because SMBs have always been kept out of the system because they may not be able to provide the required security or whatever could be the problem. But all that is kind of changing now with a lot of options being available today, especially through microfinance and the fintechs. And real estate is burgeoning in terms of mortgage lending and transaction digitization, newer forms of products, as they call it, which are available in the market today. So having said that, I think it would be fair to say that everything that we have known about finance the way it was has been dematerializing, except the person, you and me, who are the customers. I think everything happens through no papers, no money being exchanged, nothing is happening. So you are looking at all our the commercial lives or economic lives being completely dematerialized over time. And that, well, good, bad, ugly of it has been far, far accelerated by COVID-19. Many of us would not have really taken the pains of paying even the electricity bill online. But today we are so used to that there is no going back for sure. Maybe paying your loan installments or whatever, everything is now kind of thanks to the pandemic, which has completely become online. And let me tell you, of course, world over, there has been a fintech boom, especially in the Europe and the US. But let me tell you, we are not far away. And you can see these are some of the most funded or the startups. I'm sure you are familiar with many of these names like Paytm and Cred and Bharat Pay, Paisa Pay, and a lot of them. And there are also many. This is just a limited list. You have Scriptbox, you have Zerodha, you have Policy Bazaar, quite a lot of them which have been doing exceedingly well. So I think that gives you a very clear understanding of what we mean by fintech. So going back and just simply reminding ourselves, it is financial services delivery and support services delivered using technology platform and the tremendous amount of innovation, obviously over internet and the mobile. But let's not forget our good old telephone. I am not sure, youngsters, how many of you will be familiar with this is how the telephone used to look like. And many of I have seen the kids are puzzled to what do you do with the circular thing on the phone, and how would it, how can you dial a number in that? So they say it's magic, and then it's it's magic, but it is so stupid. So unfortunately, today's mobile, we know what's happening today, and the mobile has grown, like more than your life partner. This has become your life partner today in so many different sense. In fact, if you by chance lose your mobile, you know what kind of anxiety and depression goes through many people. But having said that, we are only getting more and more obsessed with the mobile because everything today is mobile centric. And we are obviously looking at financial services which are very much mobile centric. Your remittances, your collection, your credit, and your never before services which are like telling you that you may want to switch between this scheme and that scheme for greater benefit. So all these are happening today. So we are seeing more and more products which are now aligned with fintech, which are getting rolled out today. You will see that even the Amazons and Flipkarts and Ubers and Olas, everybody is already having their wallet which they offer. So everybody wants to become a bank. And that is where, as Gartner rightly predicted, banks are getting embedded in the fabric of the economy. So sooner or later, maybe a generation down the line, the banks that we know of today would never be there. So that would be a very good certainty that we are looking at. And thanks to the pandemic, the innovative FinServe models, I mean, right from appraisal to collection, there is so much of intelligence already built into many of these applications. But even if not the intelligence, the entire workflow is so intuitive that it kind of, for example, if you want a loan, you just go to an app and you just give your particulars and give your needs, and it automatically tells you how much you're eligible for, what kind of repayment pattern is good for you. So that's already kind of happening. You're just a click away from the money actually being delivered into your account. So it's as simple as that. In fact, some of the banks, they have very designer kind of finance schemes. In fact, many of us don't look at it, and that we will see is a case of fraud, wherein in some of the apps, in your banking apps, you will have an automatic credit which is already approved credit which is available in your banking app, and you can just click it and avail it. All you need to do is one click and the money will be yours. But that's also means to the hacker, one click and the money is his. So that is where you will see all that happening. And there are robots which are analyzing, taking decisions for you, which is in apparently your best interest. So it is kind of clearly a nemesis for traditional banking industry. So fintechs are certainly out to wipe off banking in a big way. And all these are only accelerating, I would think, the new techs, which is the AI, ML, and the deep learning, which is significantly changing the dimensions of how we knew financial services. In fact, more than today, we are going to see that impacting our lives significantly in the future, wherein you have augmented reality, which is already getting embedded as part of your banking apps, and you could possibly have somebody completely taking you through, or maybe your favorite icon who could be selling you the product. And of course, there is tremendous amount of encryption, which is obviously going into protect a couple of this, but then we'll see that. Then there is, of course, the crypto coins and the blockchains like the Bitcoins, and of course, a blockchain which like Ripple and all, which are making a huge impact on this entire system. IoT smart cities are only going to integrate more and more of banking into our day-to-day lives, and digital identity and authentication is certainly going to be the fulcrum of all this that's going to happen. Now, let me just take you through a typical fintech model. So there's a very simplistic fintech model. Let me assure you that when you really go out in the real world to really do any fraud investigation, or if you're even going to do any examination to see if adequate controls are there, unless and until you have a reasonable understanding of technology, let me tell you, it will become a maze. I mean, it's so difficult to understand this entire thing. There is so much of sophisticated technology which keeps on changing at least every month. wherein newer and newer gadgets and technologies are being integrated in the entire environment. But the best thing always is to start from where we know and where we are strong at. And that is where I think as fraud professionals, we'll need to first understand the business context and the workflow context of this. So as you see on the left-hand side of your screen, you have the consumer, that is you and me as users of these apps. And obviously we are either looking at a financial service, which means the bank is where your ultimate provider is, or you could be looking at purchasing something on a site like Amazon or Flipkart, or even purchasing a policy on one of these sites, or purchasing a ticket or anything. So you are looking at everywhere that you are looking at payments being made, or everywhere you're looking at best options being selected. You have a technology today which comes to help you to say, okay, no human being involved, but the best decisions taken for you, utilizing the way that you are already spending, and looking at your profile, looking at your card spends, everything it looks at, and it tries to suggest the bet. So that is where the fintechs really come in, wherein they put in the what is called as customer experience first, ease and convenience first. And that is where, if you see most of these apps or whatever these that they intend to do, of course somewhere you will have the bank being connected. And actually as customers, the first time we connect a wallet to the bank, I mean, you are done. And then of course everything happens automatically, as we know. In many of the times, unless and until you look at that SMS carefully, you will not know whether your account is debited, credited. And you know that how it is happening today, which is great in terms of informing us. Otherwise, look back 20 years, you have to walk to the bank to update your passbook. And that is the only time when you will know whether the transaction has taken place or not. And mind you, you'll have to stand in a queue, and you have to pray that the printer works, right? And you have to, of course, pray that the PC works, because sometimes the link may be cut and the PC may not be working. So there are so many kind of issues. And today it is being delivered right on your mobile. And the problem is, as they say, when you are provided with too much of benefits, you don't value them. And that's exactly what is happening with us. So this is where in the fintech segment, you have everything starting from digital banks to payment wallets. You have like payment wallets are, as I said, like the Paytm types, the Phone Pay, and all that comes in as Paisa Pay, all that comes in as part of the wallet structures. You have UPI apps, you have internet banking, you have digital lending apps, you have marketplaces, which also kind of like, as I said, the Amazon Pay and the Ola Pay or the Uber Pay and all. Then you have, of course, insurance aggregators who also come in there, the investment apps, and of course, you have a whole lot of advisory apps which also make a huge inroads today into your portfolio. And there are loyalty apps which kind of always keep on kind of enticing you with different kind of offers and savings. And we Indians obviously love freebies. So obviously that is where they target and see they can provide us we get all these offers on various apps like the Zomatos and the Swiggies and all. But then now let us look at the fraud side of it. And let me tell you, I would not have the time to take you through each of these type of frauds, but let me tell you, each of them, they have a story with them. They have significant amount of differentiations of how these frauds are performed and at what points these frauds are performed. Let us please understand that when you are a customer on your mobile, your identity is you as the person, which is your identification, and your identification is authenticated using typically the Aadhaar card or your PAN, Aadhaar plus PAN, plus you have the Aadhaar OTP, and thus you could have your bank given OTP. So all this is what are your authenticators of your identity, which tells the app or the bank to say it is actually you who you are claiming to be. But mind you, that is where maximum frauds are already started happening, because the simple thing always a hacker wants is, if you are a rich person, the hacker obviously wants to become you. When I say rich, you could be even having 10,000 rupees in your account. He's happy because he treats you as rich until he makes you poor. So that is where his goal always is. So you obviously find that the easiest way to get into this cycle is the most vulnerable part, which is on the left-hand side, our device, the way that we handle our device. And mind you, we are very good at making sure we don't press updates. We are made very good in making sure we don't put an antivirus software. We are very good in making sure we share all the apps, click on every kind of link that we want. That is by intuition that kind of comes to us, because let me tell you, we Indians are very information hungry. And whenever something comes that is related to a community or somebody whom we know, it entices us much more. So that is where the social engineering frauds really come in there. And that's going to be the most vulnerable part of it, as we will see. The merchants themselves are part of the fraud network, and they also get impacted by the frauds, which you'll also see. Like you have the various merchants on marketplaces like Flipkarts and Amazons. And then you come the fintech, and that is where we'll see that many of these fintechs obviously are targets of fraud, because that is where you are aggregating everybody's. For example, in a wallet, you want to vault all your accounts there. Okay, let's say you have got 5 banking accounts, you want to vault all of them there in a wallet, and you can simply just move around, play with money. But that's what the hacker likes, because it is a single point of failure. And that is where they would say they don't have to go and visit every bank and find out where your money is. They simply just go to the wallet and they pick up your money. So that would be as easy as that. So last but not the least, you're obviously as of now, we still rely upon our banking setup to safekeep of all our money. And once you create these links with each of these apps, the hacker feels extremely happy. He wants to thank you 1,000 times, because the banks are a little hard to crack, but all these fintechs, the merchants, and especially your mobile is the weakest link. And once they get into one of these loopholes, they know how to find their way right up into your banking account. And there have been whole number of cases wherein your bank accounts have been wiped clean because of just one wrong step. So let us look at these frauds. Of course, the first thing is, I'm sure you would be knowing about mirroring apps, but how hackers have been using, and what are mirroring apps like AnyDesk or the fake links? What do? Very simple. They will send, you have to appreciate that much of our Indians, we have the gift of the gab. We know how to talk. We know how to convince somebody. We know how to fool somebody. And that's exactly where, if you see that many of these calls that you receive from these scamsters are, unless and until you are absolutely head over shoulders, you will fall for it. And they are so authoritative in their talk. So they will ask you to do something, and we, like zombies, land up doing. He'll say, see, there is your KYC is not updated, and today your account has already been blocked, and you are now worried. You don't know what to do. And he also possibly tells you that the account will be archived, and it will not be possible for you to reactivate your account unless you go through a 1-week process. So he obviously chooses, depending upon the conversation, how to really make you more anxious and make you do what he wants you to do. And we land up saying, okay, no, please tell me what to do. And that's exactly where he sends you a link. And or he may simply ask you, saying, I'm verifying a card number, so you tell me what is your card number. Obviously, when you try to ask him back, you would know the card number, but that's not the idea. He'll tell you, I want to verify as a bank officer a card number, and you trust that, and you give out all that information. And obviously, then he says, I'm going to verify your account, and let me see if I can activate it. For this, I'll require your CVV number. We'll end up giving the CVV number. And if you don't do all that, what the latest thing that is, why trouble you for asking all that information? They simply put in the link, they ask you to simply download that particular app, which will enable the KYC to be done easily. And you also unsuspectingly download that app. And then what that gives is, that gives a remote connection to the hacker, to your mobile, wherein he can see and do everything that you can do. So obviously he can read your mobile banking app ID, he can read your password, he can read a whole lot of things by using a combination of AnyDesk and keyloggers, wherein obviously you'll have to press some of these keys. He knows this is what it is. So this is a very, very popular fraud, and especially the KYC frauds are today on top, wherein you are looking at either through voice systems, your simple mobile call, they could simply just hook you, or through an SMS, which is apparently saying that your account is blocked, or a WhatsApp message. So all of this, obviously, either they make you click on a link, or they will advise you to do a series of steps, and that is where most of them fall. they little realize that they are in for trouble. Because I mean, how much so ever you educate people, it still is a cultural issue wherein you have to tell them the bank will never ask you for OTPs. Nobody has a right to ask you for your Aadhaar number, all this. But you can understand with the country that we are, people are still kind of coming up with digital literacy. So that is where the hackers also like, especially when banking apps are taking off and the knowledge is not taking off, that's a great time for hackers to do. And then of course you have the card and the mobile theft, which is a simple thing wherein they switch your card, or simply if your mobile is lost, I mean, they can do a whole lot of things within a matter of seconds. They can get all their information out of your mobile the moment it is stolen. And of course, this is where we give away on our side to the fraudsters, wherein we don't upgrade our OS. We use rooted mobiles, because many of them, they would go to a shop and say second-hand mobiles, because maybe people cannot afford that. And the second-hand mobiles come from China or Korea, and these are typically rooted mobiles, and you land up using the rooted mobile. What's the problem with the rooted mobile? Is very simple. The in a customized operating system, which is generally installed on a mobile that you buy from a proper shop, you cannot so easily read your SMS unless and until you are logged into that account. But in a rooted mobile, I can read every transition that is going from your mobile, so that it becomes completely open. So that is where the rooted mobiles or jailbroken mobiles are a very serious risk that would be there. And then of course you have identity theft. We love posting about ourselves on the internet. And in fact, if somebody offers you, even as professionals, a fraud study report, and it asks you for some data, we don't think twice, because it is so enticing when you read that small piece and you simply just go, all you give your original details, and you're already gone and you're already stuck there. So the hackers now have to simply run bots over the internet. You would have applied for a resume somewhere. I have all your data there, because you would have given a mobile number there. You would have given your email ID there, which is something very obvious. Your name is there. And many times we also give the passport number there. So very simple for me to hack into many of these job portals and get as much as a data as we can, and put it all into a cloud environment, and it's available for the hacker community to use. So this is already kind of happening over the dark web and many other places where the data gets sold. And if you are adept at getting more information, well, you can get information like your bank account number, your customer number, your, of course, your banking data also somewhere. So all that information also can be got. It only depends one step for more of the attacks. Then, of course, today you have the eSIM takeover frauds. I'm sure many of you would be aware of the eSIMs. In high-end mobiles, today, a couple of operators, they offer the eSIM, wherein you don't require a physical chip that so far we have been requiring. You simply send a SMS to the bank with your mail ID, and the bank will send you a QR code. And if you simply just scan that QR code from your email, and just the eSIM automatically gets installed on your mobile, and that number starts working on your phone. So obviously the hackers find it so damn easy. You may not have exploited the eSIM option, but they will exploit it for you. And they will in fact offer you that service as to enable your eSIM. Then card not present frauds have been there for quite some time. All I need to, in many of the overseas websites, there is no OTP still required. So all you need is all the information that's available on your card. And getting an OTP is not very difficult, because if I simply know your mobile number, I have a lot of tools today. Unless and until your mobile is absolutely secure, there are more than one ways of reaching through one of these apps, and I can get into your mobile and possibly start reading your SMS. So the OTP diversion is very, very common. Then of course you have the account takeovers, which are very common, wherein all I need to do is I'll go and report a SIM card lost. And because the guy who is from the mobile service provider's local office, or the agent, he doesn't know what it is. He simply just puts it through. And then by the time it's already activated, by the time it goes and gets authenticated, there is not really much time left. Already the damage is done. And he has already taken over your account. He has changed all your bank account, put himself as you, and all that already gets done as part of the identity theft. And after that, he becomes you. So that's account takeover fraud. And there are, of course, a whole lot of botnet frauds, wherein they write designer software, which will go and hack into your account. In fact, gone are the days when hackers have to toil and find out email IDs, then send crafted phishing mails, then you click on that mail, and then the hacker has to log in your bank account and pray that there is money there. Then he has to initiate a transfer. But today they write botnets which do the complete life cycle. So they just end of the day, they'll report turnover to the hacker saying that this is what is hacked today and this many victims today. So it becomes so damn easy. Coming to the merchant side, if you really see, the first thing is you'd like fake online stores. That is what they do, because we think it is, oh, billion day offer today, only for today, 70% off. We know we will fall for all this. Somebody at the home will fall for all this. So they'll say saris offered at 70% off only for today from Kanchipuram. Anything that they know will hit your psyche, they do that. And you simply land up clicking on the link, which looks like your favorite store. And obviously you are stuck because you give in your login and it looks like your store, but they give you a login and you give your password, and the hacker says thank you so much, and immediately logs into your original Flipkart or Amazon account, and he takes over that account. Then of course there is chargeback fraud, which is becoming a huge problem. This now the customer does this fraud. There is a gangs operating wherein they would order for something and they know that the policy of return if you are not satisfied. So they will take for example, I order a mobile. I'll take the original mobile, switch it with a stone or whatever it is, or I can simply say I got empty boxes and ask for a refund, and you're given a refund. So a typical chargeback happens there. Of course, there are also merchants who also do frauds. They take the money and don't fulfill whatever you purchased for. It could be in many ways, which also happen, or they could simply send you counterfeit goods, which happened in between in huge branded products wherein counterfeit goods were shipped. The logistics guys do significant amount of fraud. Then there are business email compromise frauds wherein in the merchant, whosoever is that particular one, their contact numbers are available. So you send them saying that as if coming from Flipkart or Amazon, saying ship so many commodity immediately to this address. And the guy thinks it is coming from the marketplace. He ships that. All these frauds could happen. Coming to the fintech part of it, one of the most popular frauds is like in the Paytm or the Paisa Pay, or if you go, many of them provide with what is called the request money option. So you can actually request somebody for sending money. But because of the bad design of the mobile app, you don't recognize what it is. So you think that, okay, somebody is asking for an OTP that you send, and actually instead of you clearly understanding that it is money which is being taken from your account, you think that somebody is sending you money. And of course, that's obviously preceded by a good conversation wherein you are made to believe that you are a winner, or you are, being given an income tax refund or whatever it is. So anything could be a conversation there, and your entire money could be wiped off from your account. Then of course you have spear phishing attacks, which target the officials in the fintechs, and because they have password, they have admin password, they can take over the account. So all this happens. Obviously, the fintechs are highly automated, highly innovation centric. So the technology keeps on changing. Obviously, there are loopholes. There is no secure coding which goes in there. So it's very easy for the attackers to take over this entire environment in no time. So that's where, again, the same business email compromise frauds, the admin takeover frauds, insider collusion is very, very common, wherein many employees now find it lucrative for them to sell this data outside. They could be working on this very sensitive project, and they may be actually selling information outside, or maybe enabling hackers to come in, which has happened in many cases in the recent past. Then the very app is developed obviously by partners, because if you see the way that the startup works, it's all a kind of collaboration of various partners. And the app could be developed by somebody, hosted by somebody. So you don't know what is going into the app. And the app code could simply say, okay, once I leave this organization, transfer all the database to me. So it is very much could be written as part of the very live production code. Unfortunately, because of bad discipline, you land up with such, or bad integration, because the app has to get integrated with multiple apps, and that creates a huge compromise in this. So that is where you have integration attacks. Then of course you could even the fintech suffer from problem wherein fake merchants could get registered themselves on the marketplace, all the fintechs, and they could create a havoc. Then they could also the vendor could be spoofed. For example, let us say there is a particular popular store which is supplying, which is popular for this, and they register on the fintech platform. But actually what could be happening is that there could be a fake person or organization of imposting as the popular store, and they could become the vendor, and obviously that leads to a lot of money being siphoned off or whatever could happen on that. And the big problem always is because there is significant amount of access which is available to vendors. Hackers love to exploit these environments and getting through the back door. So that is also something very possible. Well, I don't want to talk about banks here. A whole lot of problems with banks, because obviously every hacker knows that's where the money is. So there are a lot of frauds like fake digital bank sites, which many people have got fooled by. Admin takeover frauds, which are very common in banks, especially digital banking environments, when any person could simply become an admin unless and until you have adequate controls which are being given there. A simple phishing attack could give him access to that. Then payment gateway takeover fraud, which many have been affected even in 2019. Many banks have been completely, they're losing money, like the Cosmos Bank, the City Union Bank. Many of them, they lost a lot of money with a switch takeover fraud, wherein now hackers said, why go and attack ATM? Simply take over the entire switch which controls all the ATM. And they made the money dispense across 28 countries to hackers all over the world. And in a matter of no time, 74 crores was lost. That was Cosmos Bank. So that is very, very possible. Then you could have database compromises wherein simply just switches the database, or typical advanced persistent threat, data theft, wherein they're constantly sitting in your network. There are malware, which are fraudulent software, which kind of keep on looking for data and keep on, copying them and quietly send them out in the back as images. So you cannot even recognize what's happening. Then as happened in the case of City Union Bank, there are fake card bins. So fake card numbers, which are, vaulted onto the switch, the ATM switch. So the ATM machine thinks that's a genuine card. And since there is no limit on the card, it keeps on vending money as much as you want. So that was something which was done, and they managed this fraud so well. I'm telling you that you have to learn from organization, from these hackers, the way that they did this fraud. It was all in a matter of few seconds. Unknown people all over the world, hackers, they got together and completely robbed this bank. UPI frauds are very common in the banking environment, which kinds of puts this entire thing on this. So considering this, and with our knowledge today, unless and until we have been exposed to decent amount of technology, please understand and answer this question. How much ready are we to counter and investigate fintech frauds? If you looked at the kind of frauds that we just looked at, do you think that the traditional way that we went about doing maybe a forensic accounting examination, or when we did, disk forensics, do you think all that will really help? Honestly, no. That's exactly where that brings us to a very important dimension today. What do we do now? So let us understand that then, if I can say, then is not far into the past. Even if we look at what maybe we are doing currently today, and if we have to engage in a fintech fraud, what is it that is required? Let us look at the scenario. See, what happened traditionally was we were always looking for a physical person, and someday we'll get our hands on him. In fact, in many cases, we knew this is the alleged fraudster, but because of lack of evidence, we are not able to do anything. I mean, in the banking setup, there are umpteen number of frauds that RBI itself has reported in its annual report, wherein many of the cases, we know this is the guy. We know this is the guy who is alleged to have perpetrated the fraud, but you cannot do anything with him because you do not have adequate evidence. But you know what's happening today.
You're not audible, sir.
Not audible? Hello?
Okay, you are audible.
You're audible.
Okay,
You're audible.
Go ahead.
I will try to speak more aloud. Similarly, you had small gangs operating. It could be mafia within a bank staff network, or all this was very possible, or a politician nexus and the gangsters who used to operate. But actually all that was not really big, that doesn't used to happen so frequently. But we have seen that after more and more of automation, it is becoming a huge possibility. The modus generally was traditionally check tampering, cash theft, diversion, card theft, And typically card not present frauds have been there since the Nigerian frauds that have been there. And then ATM cash theft. This was the common thing that we used to come across. And when it comes to forensics, we had to have the capabilities of check or accounting forensics, fingerprint forensics, interrogation capabilities. So these are the typical kind of capabilities that as forensic professionals we needed to have. And further looking at forensic accounting capabilities, how to look at paper and digital forensics, interrogation techniques, how do you prepare this report, how do you look at acceptable evidence, how do you maintain chain of custody. So this is what we have been used to as anti-fraud professionals. But what's happening now? First of all, today, the entire complexion of fraudster has changed. 90 out of 100 times, you don't or you cannot know who the fraudster is, because either they are overseas or they are hidden behind IP addresses wherein you cannot identify them. And there could be a maze of IP addresses, even with the best of best techniques, because of the faulty internet technology, because our technology of internet is IPv4 still. It was archaic. So unfortunately, it is like an open car wherein you keep on building a lot of, retrofit of security. So that is how it is working. So unfortunately, it doesn't support much of this. So it is very difficult to really identify and pinpoint a criminal. And today, because of this capability of you are having your identity which cannot be exposed, and you can be working behind clouds, you can be sitting in another country where the laws of a particular country don't affect you. You today have organized cyber criminals, gangs which operate. There are state actors. We know that many countries who are behind us. In fact, unfortunately, we are on a very, very sensitive situation as a country. And mind you, we have to be reminded of Estonia. Today, it is not about your tanks and the missiles. It is about taking over the critical parts of our economy. And let me tell you, the financial sector can be brought down in no time as part of cyber warfare. And that is where the whole problem today is, that are we really ready is the big question. Like in the past, we had Estonia as a country. I am sure we are aware, wherein the entire country was brought down because of a very simple state level issue between two states. So this is a big problem. And today you have insiders who are very, very, a big issue of anxiety, because they have access to sensitive environments. And if they have one wrong intention, they can create a lot of damage. Or they could be even innocent guys, marketing guys, who don't think they are doing a wrong thing, when they simply copy the entire customer database or a leads database on their mobile phone and they simply WhatsApp it to somebody in their team. They don't realize what actually is in for them, wherein fraudsters could be simply stealing that. And then, of course, you have vendors and partners, wherein you have a lot of guys who have hidden capabilities. Let us please understand, today's generation, which is the millennial generation and the Z generation, are so damn technically capable that you will really, be surprised at their capabilities. Dark web community is already there. It's burgeoning. They are doing excellent business, and COVID-19 has been a great opportunity for them, wherein they have done a lot of business, a lot of bank got hacked, a lot of large organization got hacked, tremendous amount of ransomware attacks. So this is typically a whole lot of big fraud gang, which is making merry now. Today, if you look at their modus, they start with the digital social engineering. They use features which are provided in your own apps against you, right? The very things that we use for protection is being used against us, like the KYC or your whatever Aadhaar card and whatever. They have crime tools and kits, which are today, forget about our preparedness on emerging technology. They are already an emerging technology. Much of the crime syndicate uses a lot of AI and ML. Let me tell you that. So today, looking at where we are in terms of forensic professionals as anti-fraud professionals, do we even have the competence and wherewithal to handle this is the question that we must carefully consider. I'm sure quite a few might be already in there, but it is a question to relook and ask, if we are called upon to do any of this fraud examinations or forensic examination, are we ready? Because you are looking at capability to do heterogeneous network forensic. Let us please understand, the one transaction that you put through for buying a mobile online through a marketplace traverses 5 to 60 partners. And if you have to do forensic examination, let us please understand, the entire chain of the evidence counts. And unless and until you have access to the entire chain of evidence, you cannot build the entire chain of the transactions and the events properly. So that is where there is whole lot of need for tech savviness. Rather than tech savviness, I would rather say, as compared to accountants, forensic experts need to have even engineering capabilities, if I may say, because you are looking at data science as a very important option today, wherein you have to discover a fraud possibility, and you have to be ideally good at theory of numbers and look at statistical analysis using AI, ML tools, chain of digital custody, because everything is stored in, today in a digital form. You have to make sure we meet the requirements of acceptable evidence in court of law. So there is a whole lot of demand on the profession today. But let us also not be staring away that while there may be disruptive techniques which are there, but the motives are age old. What drives these motives are age old. Earlier, possibly somebody would take a stone and throw it at you. Today, somebody takes a gun and shoots you. The problem again is simple at that time. Could be jealousy, anger, or whatever. So I think the one factor which we are not paying importance in cyber forensics and digital fraud investigation is digital cyber psychology. So I don't think we are paying attention to that, because we keep on looking at controls. We actually do not understand the criminal well. And that is a very, very big letdown today. So let's look at it. What drives them? You looked at all those frauds. It's the same. There is an opportunity, take it, right? If there are no controls or weak, why not do it? If there are other opportunities of making money or others are making money, why should I also not do it? So that is a kind of opportunity argument. And in terms of pressure, there could be lust for easy money, which, I mean, thanks to the internet providing the shield, everybody wants to do that. Lifestyle, I want to have a bigger lifestyle. I want to own a BMW, as one of the kids has ordered a BMW in Europe and he got it delivered. And let me tell you how he did it. It was fabulous. Then peer influence, somebody simply trying to provoke you to say, oh, you can't do hacking, you can't hack into side, I can do that, and they get into that. Then psychological and emotional drivers, which has typically happened during COVID-19, things of greed, challenge, hatred, jealousy, which are there in any environment, depression, loss of jobs, COVID-19 pressure. All this has led to people trying to, because sitting at their home before the system is your only vent out, right? And their only entertainment, is your only engagement. And in fact, on a lighter side, everybody...
Sorry, sir, I'm interfering. Can we close in another 5-6 minutes, sir?
Oh, okay. Okay. So rationalize. Okay, I'll just skip.
That is highly interesting, but time is also, we have to see.
I know. I completely appreciate that. So we'll try to quickly go through that. So I'm just going to skip that. So rationalization, saying it is not wrong when, as they say, twisted ethics of Kali Yuga. So as they say, it's okay to do that today. And if you thought that all these guys who did these frauds, which I told you, were tech nerds. Look at these guys. Okay, they may not even understand the English properly, but they are super good in doing cybercrime. You see the number of mobiles confiscated from them, the number of SIM cards, and this is a gang. And there are a whole lot of gangs today which are operating. They are tech savvy, yes, but they may not be literate. There are organized crime syndicates. Like you got now hubs which specialize in certain kinds of frauds, like Jamtara. I'm sure you all heard about it. There is also a web series on that. They specialize in credit card frauds. Then there are gangs operating out of Indore, Gurugram, Bhopal, who kind of specialize in different kinds of frauds. That's unfortunately become a kind of unfortunate problem. Then you have international crime syndicates like the Lazarus group, the APT 16 and 30 groups. Then you have state actors which are setting up their own entire ways of getting into this, and that is getting used by the hackers to do frauds. And collaboration frauds are also there. So all this is now kind of bringing a new complexion to fraud as we had known as. Let us take this. For example, there have been a lot of call centers operating like authentic call centers, which get access to your computers and they do a whole lot of things. For example, we go and search for the bank's customer care number on Google, and half of the times that number is fudged. It actually is a fraudster's number. Wherein you think you are calling up the bank, it will look exactly and you'll be talking exactly like to the bank number, and you're revealing all your data to them. And Paytm, for example, a customer lost 1.7 lakhs. We're pretty we know how we did it in the KYC fraud. There are a whole lot of things like that. The topping of all that is the Wirecard fraud or the Wirecard scandal in Europe, wherein for the first time there was a fintech which rose like the Googles and the Amazons, but then they found out there is a whole lot of fraud around this entire fintech. Of course, this was a typical organizational or a constitutional fraud wherein they had used technology to shield the various parts of the organization and do the fraud. So the means, whatever was our authentication mechanism, they are being weaponized by the cyber professionals today. Voice call, email, SMS, WhatsApp, browser pop-up, digital banking, KYC, Aadhaar, AnyDesk, all this we use for the right things, but hackers use it for their purposes. And what is the target? Simply get your personal information, get your family information, your preferences, mobile number, SIM, IMEI number, device details, card data. All this is what the hacker is looking for. And once they get that, they are very happy with that. So you see that, when you say email or whatever, today it is being used against you. That is what they do. So today, there is a perfect concoction for frauds like filter coffee, which is always very difficult to prepare. And this is Kumbakonam filter coffee, which is supposed to have is unique taste. Your digital identity is as easily available to any hacker. You are a gullible victim because most of them, even the most digital savvy kids, they also get defrauded. And even if most of us who are digitally agnostic, of course, we are always a target. There are archaic police procedures. You have to go and file a complaint. I mean, by the time money is already gone. So what's the point in that? Cybercrime response talent is deficit, big problem. Laws with loopholes, which don't enable you to really get through. Most of the investigation land up in dead ends. Then frauder friendly. The entire ecosystem is fraudster friendly. That's the whole problem. All these add up, as I said, to a perfect recipe. So of course, RBI statistics are there. I would skip some of these slides. If you see this, these are like the Google glasses today, which comes up from Max, one of the latest innovative startups. And everything is voice conversational systems. And you can see everything, you can operate everything as you see this lady is doing. So, I mean, imagine if you are going to do a forensics on this kind of environment, where are you today? So that's a question we have to ask. So methods and techniques, especially on crime, examination of crime scenario, cross partners, complex tech, real-time investigation, everything is changing. Unless and until you know how to handle digital evidence, cross-party digital evidence, logs. I mean, I would have talked about logs a lot from our experience, but for paucity of time, admissibility of evidence, of digital evidence, the court of law. You cannot today do an investigation alone. You cannot do a forensics alone. You have to collaborate with partners, regulators, organizations like Certain. The entire ecosystem needs to be understood very well. So that's where that brings in the specialization or the need or skill sets of understanding technology architecture, especially the layered technical analysis, how to do that, how to do digital forensic examination, how to do a digital reconstruction of the events, and more importantly, how to look at autonomous fraud prevention and detection, because the fraud is not going to wait for you. By the time you go through all your procedure, fraud is already done and gone. So a great future is waiting for whom is the big question, because if we really look at, I'm not going to take you through this. There has been a jump in UPI transactions, e-commerce, you name it. Every aspect of the digital economy in India is kind of suddenly springing up like anything. Excuse me. The question is, as anti-fraud professionals, are we ready? So future techniques, again, for want of time, not going to take you. We have to be, as fraud prevention professionals, familiar with each of these technologies and how they help in fraud prevention. The future of fraud fintech is, I think, customer centric. Obviously, it is going to be more autonomous, more and more technologies, and we could see a lot of cryptocurrencies coming into our lives. Millennials, they always prefer to go for digital banking. They don't want to see a bank. That's not intended. And let us look at today how health insurance premiums are calculated. They look at your food bills. They look at what you're eating. They look at what kind of gym data you have from my Fitbits. They look at your driving habits. They look at all this, and then they do a designer policy for you with the lowest premium if you're really good at all this. But if you're really bad, your premium is very high. So it's good in one way. We are being pushed to discipline. And look at the cryptocurrencies. They are all performing very, very well. Let me tell you that. And in India, there is a whole lot of investment in cryptocurrencies already happening. Gartner 2021 looks much more scary if we say from this perspective. If we look at the forensic capabilities which you have to have for this kind of environment, I think we have a long way to go. So ultimately, I just want to drive home the point that you require a fraud risk management framework wherein you clearly have a means of understanding and documenting the business and the technology architecture. You need to have an agile fraud risk management framework. You cannot simply be going with the traditional way. You have to look at fintech business risk and the risk appetite which is required with regard to this, and then define and communicate to your organization. Ethics and culture are very important because you have to stop the guy from thinking negative. That's the best thing to do. Then robust risk management capabilities will be required because you have to look at a whole lot of correlation between various data. Define anti-fraud thinking right across. Every person now in the organization at a leadership needs to be an anti-fraud expert. Define the organization structure, who is responsible for what. Define a clear fraud response plan. And very important, that you have to closely work with the security operations center and the fraud monitoring and forensic capabilities. So this is kind of becoming the requirement of the future. So just the takeaways, I think one thing, fintech is now default by design ready for enabling frauds. That's unfortunately so. There are mindless innovation without controls. Nobody thinks about fraud prevention at the design level. So they are made for fraud. So the fraud prevention is not by design. As I said, the partners are part of the value chain. They are not part of the fraud chain. So the anti-fraud professional needs digital forensic and engineering skills today, strong capabilities needed for business aligned tech fraud controls. So I'm sorry I had to rush through that, but with that, just end with my favorite quote, which I would think is always pertinent from Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi. And he used to say, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render to the world. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if you have time for questions. I'm sincere apologies that I had to rush through the session, but I'll be happy to take questions here, or you have my coordinates. We can always connect offline. Thank you so much.
Sir, you need not be apologetic. The session is so
excellent. No, Vital, you covered well. Shankar, at least one or two questions. Rest of the questions can be taken online.
Thank you,
sir. Sir, if you see the chat window, everybody is cursing us. Why you have given so short time to him?
Yeah.
So, thank you. We'll take one or two questions, sir, and then we'll take other questions offline. Please, please bear with us, and Shankar will ask the questions. The two important questions he will ask.
Sure, sir.
Yes, sir. In fact, some of the questions you have covered as part of your presentation towards the end. So I'll just ask the questions from Vivek Krishnan. So one of the green pastures in India for fintech in recent past has been in agriculture sector. So this covers aggregators, traders, wholesalers, small and medium entrepreneurs. How do we as financiers validate the identity and intelligence info about the customer and his operations? And also on the flip side, from the customer side, how do we know fintechs offering services are genuine?
Very, very good question. Answer on, unfortunately, is very complex, but I'll just give you a brief answer. First of all, yes, it is a problem. Today, we, no doubt, the agricultural sector, especially after this, what's happening now, the current farm bills, is going, if it is led that way, is going to boom like anything. Even if not, doesn't come, there is still going to be a big boom, which in fact, one of the thriving sectors during the pandemic, as you know, has been agricultural sector. And many farmers have adopted to digital banking, which is quite a surprise. In fact, 9 out of every 10 offtakes in the tier 3, tier 4 cities and the rural environment is a vernacular content accessed smart mobile. So the point is, yes, identity is the fulcrum of the entire financial sector system. And today we have a problem with identity because they are still not digitally savvy. But what many fintechs are doing is they are collecting a lot of behavior data, like geotagging. They look at where the person generally moves around. So one of the examples is that they look at his pressure, key pressure. So they look at a lot of analysis of this data and they're able to reasonably identify, of course, with the tolerance rate, that this is the nearest to this person. So they try to bring down the identity frauds in that manner, which is still in very early stages, but I would think that's the way to go in the future. I hope that answers your question.
Sure, sir. So, sir, rest of the questions probably we will send it to you and we will take it offline, sir.
Sure, thank you.
Over to Mr. Vijay Srinivas.
Sir, one message in chat window which attracted me is absolute delight to be listening to this moving session. It was like listening to the daily news, but through editor's mouth. Thank you so much.
Very nice.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great.
I think Sharma sir, Vice President, he wants to say a few words because they're great friends, Vital Raj and Sharma.
No. He's instrumental in calling him.
Exactly, sir. Exactly. Sharma
I must really thank him, but thank you so much.
Yeah, Vital, actually, you are a friend, philosopher, and guide for me. We are meeting at several places, and I have called you for several conferences, and you never dissatisfied us, because that is the way you take the conference in such a way you to your tide. And thank you very much. And today's session was totally, I thought provoking, because we were not that much depth deep into the fintech frauds. But today you have covered in such a way from consumer to the banks. I've seen that at least 36 types of frauds you have discussed today.
Oh, thank you.